My son did not know I was watching when he held my teacup beneath the kitchen light and whispered, 3 drops should finish what the pills started. What broke me was not the bottle in his hand. It was the wedding ring on that hand, the ring I had paid for, on the finger of the boy I once carried into an emergency room while he screamed for his father. Please, before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from today. My name is Thomas Hale. I was 70, widowed, and still foolish enough to believe there were lines a child could never cross. My son Adrian had crossed one with the calm concentration of a man seasoning soup. He stood at the counter with his back to me, counting each drop into the blue porcelain cup my late wife, Margaret, had given me on our 40th anniversary. His wife, Vanessa, watched from the doorway as Adrian stirred the tea with Margaret's silver spoon. Dr. Vance said more would look suspicious, she whispered. Vanessa asked what would happen if I refused. Adrian smiled. He always does what I tell him now. Those words hurt worse than the poison. After Margaret died, Adrian moved in and promised I would never face grief alone. I mistook supervision for devotion. Now I understood why he prepared every meal and placed every pill into my palm. I stayed still as Adrian brought the cup. Chamomile, he said, the way Mom used to make it. Using her memory to deliver my death was the cruelest part. I looked down at the cup and saw a thin rainbow curling across the surface. You remembered the honey? I asked. Of course. Your mother always said you forgot the little things. His smile tightened. Vanessa appeared behind him, pretending to straighten a curtain while watching my mouth. They were not waiting for me to enjoy the tea. They were waiting for me to swallow. I raised the cup until the steam touched my face. Adrian leaned forward. For 1 second, I saw the little boy who once slept on my chest during storms. Then I saw the bottle in his pocket. A father can love the memory of his child and still recognize the monster before him. I took a small sip without letting the liquid pass my lips, coughed into my handkerchief, and let the tea soak into the cloth. Adrian's shoulders relaxed. Vanessa smiled. Better? He asked. Much, I whispered. He kissed my forehead. The gesture made my stomach turn. Get some rest, Pop. In a few days, you won't be hurting anymore. They walked into the hallway, and Vanessa murmured, By Sunday? Adrian answered, Before the inheritance office opens Monday. I waited until their bedroom door closed. Then I poured the remaining tea into a sterile specimen jar hidden beneath my blanket, sealed it, and wrote the time on the label. For 6 weeks, my strength had vanished. My vision had blurred, and my heart had raced. Everyone thought grief was killing me. Adrian and Vanessa were counting on it. What they did not know was that 3 days earlier, I had found a pharmacy receipt bearing my name for a heart drug I had never been prescribed. They did not know I had stopped swallowing the pills. They did not know the smoke detector above the stove was recording every movement in the kitchen. And they certainly did not know that before Adrian brought me that cup, I had already sent one message to the only person I trusted. If anything happens to me tonight, do not let my son touch my body or my estate. I stared at Margaret's cup in my hands and allowed myself 10 seconds to grieve the child I had lost while he was still alive. Then I stood, carried the poisoned tea downstairs, and placed it inside the locked refrigerator in my workshop. Adrian believed he had just shortened my life by 3 drops. In reality, he had measured out the first 3 pieces of evidence that would destroy his own. 6 weeks before I watched Adrian poison my tea, I believed age and grief were the enemies inside my house. The first attack came while I carried firewood. My heart pounded, yellow sparks filled my vision, and I fell to one knee. Adrian rushed outside and held me. I thanked God he had moved home after Margaret's funeral. The attacks became daily. I woke exhausted after 10 hours of sleep. The staircase left me breathless. Food tasted strangely bitter, and faces sometimes appeared surrounded by pale green halos. One morning, I became dizzy in the shower and caught the rail before my head struck the tile. Adrian found me sitting on the bathroom floor. He knelt, gripped my hand, and said, "You can't be alone anymore." By dinner, he had taken my car keys, moved my bank statements into his office, and changed the password on the online medical portal so he could manage the stress for me. Every loss of independence arrived disguised as an act of love. Adrian selected Dr. Marcus Vance, an old family acquaintance, to oversee my care. Vance examined me for less than 15 minutes before describing my symptoms as age-related cardiac weakness aggravated by grief. He never ordered the tests my previous doctor had recommended. Instead, he prescribed 2 white tablets and told Adrian to control each dose. "Memory problems are common at his age," Vance said while I sat 3 feet away. "We don't want him taking them twice." Adrian placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'll make sure he's safe." From then on, he delivered my pills with breakfast every morning. He never left until I swallowed. If I hesitated, Vanessa would appear with juice or bread, speaking slowly as though I had already become confused. Soon they discussed appointments over my head and installed a bell beside my chair. It looked considerate, but it meant I was expected to remain seated. The more medicine I took, the worse I became. My hands trembled. I lost 11 pounds. Some afternoons, my heart slowed until each beat felt separated from the next by a frightening silence. At night, it raced so hard that the mattress seemed to pulse beneath me. When I asked Vance whether the pills could be responsible, he did not examine me. He looked at Adrian and said, "Anxiety often makes elderly patients suspicious of treatment." Adrian drove me home in silence. At the traffic light, he squeezed my knee and said, "You have to trust us, Pop." I apologized. That apology still shames me. Margaret had been gone 4 months, and I was terrified of losing the family I had left. Adrian understood that fear better than I did. He used it to make obedience feel like gratitude. Vanessa recorded only my weakest moments for the doctor. She stopped whenever I recovered. They were building a portrait of incapacity, not documenting my health. The first crack in their performance came on a rainy Thursday. Adrian and Vanessa left early to inspect what they called an investment property. Minutes after their car disappeared, water began dripping through the ceiling beneath their guest bathroom. I climbed upstairs to find the source. Beside the sink stood a trash bag Adrian had tied but forgotten to remove. A pharmacy envelope protruded through a tear in the plastic. The address printed on it belonged to a town more than 2 hours away. Adrian had told me every prescription came from Vance's clinic pharmacy downtown. I reached for the envelope, and for the first time in 6 weeks, my trembling stopped. The envelope contained a receipt from North County Pharmacy, dated 12 days earlier. The patient name was Thomas Hale. The prescriber was Marcus Vance. But the medication printed beneath them was not one of the 2 drugs listed on the bottles beside my breakfast plate. It was digoxin, 30 tablets, with instructions to take 1 daily. I read the line 3 times. The receipt showed cash payment, which made no sense. Every legitimate prescription of mine was billed through insurance. I photographed both sides, returned the envelope to the exact angle in the trash, and locked myself in the bathroom. My first search for digoxin described a heart medication used in carefully controlled doses. The second search showed what happened when too much entered the body. Nausea, weakness, confusion, abnormal heart rhythms, blurred vision, and yellow or green halos around lights. I stared at the screen until the words became clear again. It was not grief. It was not age. Someone had been poisoning me 1 breakfast at a time. I wanted to confront Adrian, but he would call me confused. Vance would offer a medical excuse, and the evidence would disappear. 41 years in commercial property had taught me to examine the documents before accusing anyone. Using an old password, I opened my medical portal. Vance had added a false heart diagnosis and notes, describing fainting, memory loss, and appointments that had never happened. A forged authorization gave Adrian medical control because of my supposed cognitive decline. They were creating a history that would make my death look natural, and my objections unreliable. I saved the records and called the pharmacy from a prepaid phone. The clerk confirmed that my authorized caregiver had collected the drug twice, with the second pickup occurring 4 days before my symptoms intensified. Adrian had been obtaining it without using insurance. I examined the honey, drink mix, and sleep drops without touching them. Any could carry the drug, and 1 disturbed container could reveal that I knew. At 4 that afternoon, Adrian's car returned. I was seated in my chair with a blanket over my knees and the bell beside my hand. He entered carrying groceries and smiled when he saw me. "Feeling any better, Pop?" "More tired than yesterday." His expression softened with what I once would have mistaken for concern. That means the medicine is working. Your body is adjusting. Vanessa walked behind him and studied my face. Did you go upstairs? She asked. Couldn't manage the stairs, I said. She held my gaze for a moment, then smiled. Good, you need to rest. That single word good confirmed more than any confession could have. They were pleased that I was weakening. Adrian brought my evening pills with water and watched. This time, I pressed the tablets beneath my tongue, pretended to swallow, then coughed them into my hand when he turned away. I hid them inside an empty film canister beneath the cushion and understood the danger of what came next. If my health improved too quickly, they might change their method or increase the dose. I needed to appear sick while allowing my body to recover, and I needed proof stronger than forged records and a discarded receipt. That night, through the wall, I heard Adrian tell Vanessa, "He's fading faster now." She replied, "Then Thanksgiving should be the last one." I lay in darkness, holding the stolen pills in my fist. I had entered that bathroom as a frightened father searching for an explanation. I left it knowing I was already inside a murder investigation, and that, for the moment, I was its only living witness. The next morning, I began living two lives. In front of Adrian and Vanessa, I moved like a man whose body was failing. I dragged one foot on the stairs, asked the same question twice, and let a coffee cup slip from my fingers when they were watching. Behind their backs, I became methodical. I photographed every pill before sealing it in a numbered evidence bag. I wrote the date, time, meal, and symptoms in a notebook hidden inside the hollow base of Margaret's sewing cabinet. I also scheduled a blood test under a shortened version of my name at a clinic in another county. The nurse called that evening. "Mr. Hale, your digoxin level is dangerously elevated. You need emergency care. Please email the laboratory report and preserve the sample," I said. "Are you currently prescribed digoxin?" "No." Silence followed. "Then you need to contact the police." "I will," I said, "as soon as I can prove who is administering it." I knew a laboratory result proved poisoning, but not the poisoner. Adrian could claim I had taken the drug myself during a confused episode. Vanessa's videos were designed to make that explanation believable. I needed their hands, their voices, and their intentions on record. Using cash, I bought 3 cameras, a USB charger facing the counter, one inside the mantel clock, and another in the smoke detector. They recorded to encrypted cards rather than the home internet. I stored copies in a safe deposit box Adrian did not know existed. Vanessa nearly caught me installing the last camera. I pretended the smoke alarm had chirped, then let my knees buckle. Her suspicion became irritation. She guided me to my chair and called Adrian to report another example of my supposed decline. My performance protected the camera. The first 2 days produced nothing more than Adrian crushing tablets near the sink and Vanessa checking my pill organizer. On the 3rd night, they sat in the living room after believing I had fallen asleep. Through the camera, I watched Adrian open a spreadsheet on his laptop. Vanessa whispered, "At this rate, we'll miss the deadline." "Vance said his blood level is already high," Adrian replied. "Then why is he still walking around?" "Because we can't rush it. A sudden overdose triggers an autopsy." Vanessa tapped the screen. "The lender calls every morning. We have until the Monday after Thanksgiving." Adrian poured himself whiskey from the bottle I had received on retirement. "Once the estate transfers, everyone gets paid." The word estate hollowed out my chest. I turned up the volume. Vanessa asked whether the properties could be sold immediately. Adrian said 3 shopping centers in the downtown apartments could be liquidated within weeks. "And the land?" $12 million total if we sell fast. More than enough to clear everything and leave the country. They were discussing my life in columns. Debt, property, deadline, death. Not once did Adrian say father. He called me the transfer. I kept recording even when tears blurred the screen. Grief wanted me to enter the room and ask what remained of the boy Margaret and I had raised. Survival kept me in the chair. At breakfast the next morning, Adrian placed 2 white tablets beside my plate. He looked tired. "Pop? Bad dreams? About Mom? About losing my family?" His hand paused above the water glass. For an instant, I thought guilt had reached him. Then he pushed the pills closer. "Take these. You'll feel better." I concealed them beneath my tongue, swallowed the water, and smiled. Vanessa watched from the doorway. When Adrian turned away, I transferred the tablets into my sleeve. The cameras captured everything. That afternoon, I removed the memory card and watched the footage twice. The evidence was clear, but I still lacked the full motive. The source of Adrian's deadline, the amount he owed, and why Vance was willing to risk his career. I labeled the file Thanksgiving -9 and locked it away. They believed they were counting down the final days of my life. I was counting the days until their secrets became impossible to deny. The $12 million had never felt like a fortune to me. It was 41 years of mornings that began before sunrise, dinners Margaret ate alone, and risks we took when our bank account could not survive one mistake. We bought our first neglected shopping strip when Adrian was 3. Margaret kept the books while I repaired it after work. Over 4 decades, it grew into 3 shopping centers, apartments, and valuable transit land, all debt-free. Margaret wanted the properties preserved for future generations, and the trust transferred control to Adrian after my natural death. What I did not know was that my son had spent the previous year gambling against that future. The camera showed Adrian owed $1.86 million to Meridian Trade Holdings after a failed shipping investment. Interest increased weekly, and he had pledged my land and 1 shopping center as security using forged initials. Vanessa knew everything. "You said the Singapore deal couldn't fail," she whispered. "It didn't fail." The partner disappeared. "And now Meridian thinks we have the properties." Adrian pressed both hands against his face. "They gave me until Monday because I showed them the trust. Then Thomas has to be dead before the courthouse opens." Hearing my name in her mouth made the room feel colder. Adrian did not object. He calculated. "If Vance signs the certificate Friday, the transfer instruction can be filed electronically. We sell the land first, pay Meridian, and still have $10 million. Vanessa smiled. "And France?" "Once the plazas close." Their dream required the destruction of everything Margaret and I had protected. They planned to sell below market value and disappear. My death was the missing signature on a fraud already underway. 3 months earlier, Adrian had asked me to sell the transit land for his venture. I refused, and the poisoning began 11 days later. My refusal supplied the motive. My trust supplied the timetable. The next morning, I tested him. "I've been thinking about the land," I said as he prepared my oatmeal. His spoon stopped. "What about it? Perhaps I should sell while I'm alive. Donate most of the money to the hospital in Margaret's name." A flash of panic crossed his face. "You can't make decisions like that when you're confused." "I feel clear today." Vanessa entered so quickly that she must have been listening. "Dr. Vance said sudden clarity can happen before another decline. Then perhaps I should call my attorney this morning." Adrian gripped the counter until his knuckles whitened. "Arthur will only upset you. Let me handle it." I lowered my head and allowed my hands to tremble. "Maybe you're right." Relief passed between them. The camera caught it. An hour later, Adrian called Vance from the garage. "He mentioned selling the land," he said. "Thanksgiving cannot slip." Vance answered loudly enough for the microphone to capture. Then increased the evening dose slightly. Nothing dramatic. I sat upstairs listening to a doctor prescribe my murder like a change in blood pressure medication. The knowledge burned away the last excuse I had protected Adrian with. He was not a desperate son, making one terrible mistake. He was using my love, Margaret's legacy, and my failing body as collateral for a life he believed he deserved. That night, I opened the original trust documents. Beside Adrian's name, Margaret had written a note in pencil years earlier. "Our boy will protect what we built." I traced her handwriting with one finger, then closed the folder. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her empty chair. "He chose to destroy it." For the first time, I understood that preserving our legacy no longer meant leaving it to our son. It meant keeping it out of his hands. Dr. Marcus Vance came to my house 2 evenings later carrying a black medical bag, and the confidence of a man who believed his reputation made him untouchable. Adrian led him upstairs while Vanessa poured 3 glasses of whiskey in the living room. I lay beneath the blankets, breathing through my mouth and letting one hand twitch against the sheet. Vance checked my pulse for less than 10 seconds. "His rhythm is unstable," he announced. "Could be days, maybe a week." He did not use a stethoscope. He did not ask whether I was in pain. He looked at me the way an appraiser looks at a condemned building. "Thomas," he said loudly, "do you know where you are?" "Margaret is making dinner," I murmured. My wife had been dead for 4 months. Vanessa covered her mouth, but I saw satisfaction in her eyes. Vance turned to Adrian. "Document that, time and date." They left my door partly open, certain the confused old man would fall asleep. When they went downstairs, I opened the hidden camera feed. Vance accepted the whiskey and loosened his tie. Increasing the dose was reckless, he said. His laboratory values could become impossible to explain if anyone orders toxicology. Adrian went pale. "You told me Thanksgiving. I told you gradual exposure followed by one controlled event, not panic." Vanessa leaned toward him. "Can you still certify it as natural?" Vance smiled. "I have spent a year preparing for that." He opened his medical bag and removed copies of my records. Page after page contained invented chest pain, fainting spells, cognitive decline, and a family history of sudden cardiac death. He had even altered a scan from another patient and attached my name to it. "When he dies, I list acute myocardial infarction caused by chronic arrhythmia," Vance explained. "At 70, recently widowed, no coroner will question it." "What about an autopsy?" Adrian asked. Vance told him to demand immediate cremation after the natural death certificate. I had never requested that. Margaret and I owned adjoining burial plots. Vanessa took out her phone and read from a checklist. Death certificate Friday. Trust notice Saturday. Transfer Monday. Vance raised his glass. "And my payment?" Adrian said. $700,000 when the land sells, not from your personal account. The invoice will show estate consulting." The doctor nodded. "Then we understand each other." I saved the recording. Vance had now described the false death certificate, forged records, blocked autopsy, and his payment. Vanessa asked what would happen if I resisted. Vance told them to hide 3 drops in Margaret's honey. I felt the scar on my palm ache as my fist tightened beneath the blanket. Vance had eaten at our table for years. Margaret once saved his clinic with a fundraiser. Now he was teaching our son to poison her honey. When Adrian asked whether I would suffer, Vance said I might remain conscious for several minutes. Adrian looked down at his drink. I waited for fear, regret, anything human. Instead, he said, "Make sure he can't call anyone." Vanessa promised to keep my phone downstairs. The 3 of them touched their glasses together. I stopped the recording only after Vance left. I sat in darkness until a message appeared. "File saved to secure backup." Those words returned air to my lungs. I copied the evidence to 2 encrypted drives and added one instruction. If my body is found, demand toxicology before release. I no longer needed another conversation. I needed a lawyer who could protect the estate, an investigator who understood elder abuse, and a plan that would let Adrian, Vanessa, and Vance commit one final act while the law watched. Their conspiracy was complete. Now I would decide where it ended. The following afternoon, I told Adrian I needed fresh air and asked him to drive me to Margaret's cemetery. He refused at first, saying the cold might strain my heart. I let him argue until Vanessa reminded him that grieving widowers were supposed to visit their wives before Thanksgiving. Adrian finally dropped me at the cemetery gate and promised to return in 40 minutes. I waited until his car disappeared, crossed through a side entrance, and entered a taxi Arthur Pendleton had sent under another name. Arthur had been my attorney and friend for 45 years. His smile vanished as he reviewed the evidence. "We call the police now." "Someone outside Vance's influence," I said. Arthur nodded. "Then we do this correctly." Arthur amended the trust, removing Adrian from authority and freezing transfers after my death. The properties would fund elder abuse shelters in Margaret's name, while fraud or violence against me would disqualify Adrian entirely. I signed and watched his imagined inheritance disappear beneath my handwriting. It did not feel like revenge. It felt like locking a door after discovering someone inside my home with a knife. Arthur then called Detective Lena Brooks, a state investigator specializing in financial crimes against elderly victims. She arrived without a uniform, questioned how the evidence was obtained, and confirmed a strong case for conspiracy poisoning, forgery, and financial exploitation. A forensic doctor outside Vance's network confirmed repeated digoxin exposure. Brooks took custody of the poison sample and sealed the original recordings as evidence. The truth no longer depended on whether I survived. "Why not arrest them now?" Arthur asked. Brooks pointed to the video. "They discussed the plan, but defense counsel will say it was fantasy, exaggeration, or coercion by Vance. We have exposure and intent. What we need is the act connecting Adrian's hand to Thomas's final dose." Thanksgiving was 4 days away. I understood before she finished speaking. "You want the kitchen camera to capture him preparing it. Only if you agree," Brooks said. "You will not drink. Officers will be close enough to enter within seconds. The cup will be seized and tested." Arthur shook his head. "He has already risked enough. If we arrest them today," I said, "Adrian may blame Vance, Vanessa may blame Adrian, and Vance may call the recordings misunderstood. I want each of them to make a choice while no one is forcing them." Brooks said I could withdraw at any moment. I agreed only if officers monitored the house and an ambulance waited nearby. We created a signal. I would switch the cups, ask Adrian to drink to my health, and place Margaret's silver spoon across my plate. That gesture would mean the poison had been served and the team should enter. Before I left, Arthur gripped my shoulder. "You do not have to prove courage to anyone." "This is not courage," I said. "It is the last time my son will mistake my love for helplessness." I returned to the cemetery before Adrian arrived. He found me sitting beside Margaret's grave with my cane across my knees. "Did talking to Mom help?" he asked. I looked at the man preparing to kill me and answered honestly, "Yes. She reminded me to protect what we built." Adrian smiled, believing I meant his inheritance. I smiled back, knowing it was already beyond his reach. Thanksgiving arrived beneath a sky, the color of bruised steel. By 4 o'clock, the house smelled of roasted turkey, sage dressing, and the cinnamon candles Margaret used to light every November. Adrian wore the navy sweater she had given him during her final Christmas. Vanessa set the table with Margaret's china. They had dressed my execution in the memories of the woman who loved us all. A transmitter monitored my heart while Detective Brooks watched the cameras from an unmarked van. I had one task: remain alive until Adrian made his choice. During dinner, Adrian squeezed my hand and said, "We love you, Pop." I remembered caring for that same hand after he cut it as a boy. Now it waited for poison to finish what love had once protected. I ate slowly and complained of nausea, exactly as Brooks had instructed. Vanessa and Adrian exchanged a glance. When dessert was cleared, Adrian stood. "I'll make the chamomile. It always settles Dad's stomach." "Use your mother's honey," I said. His eyes flickered. "Of course." He carried both cups into the kitchen. Through the cabinet reflection, I saw him check the doorway, remove the brown bottle, and count 3 drops into the chipped cup, my cup. Vanessa whispered, "3?" Adrian nodded, stirred in Margaret's honey, and returned the bottle to his pocket. Then he carried both cups to the table, with the gentle smile of a devoted son. "To one more Thanksgiving," he said. He placed the chipped cup before me and kept the other for himself. I held the cup. An oily circle moved beneath the steam, while Vanessa watched my lips and Adrian watched my throat. I raised the cup halfway, then stopped. "Before I drink, I want to ask you something." Adrian's smile held. "Anything. When I die, will you bury me beside your mother?" Vanessa looked down. Adrian answered, "Of course, Pop." "Then why did Dr. Vance write that I requested immediate cremation?" His fingers tightened around his cup. "You must have forgotten, perhaps." I looked at Vanessa. "And did I also forget authorizing the sale of the transit land?" She pushed back from the table. "Thomas, you're becoming upset." "No, for the first time in weeks, I am perfectly calm." Adrian stood, but I moved faster. I slid the poisoned cup across the polished table until it stopped in front of him, then drew his untouched tea toward me. The porcelain made a soft scraping sound that seemed louder than thunder. Adrian stared at the chipped handle. All color left his face. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. "There," I said. "Now nothing is confused. Drink with me." Adrian did not touch the cup. "That one has too much honey." "You made it exactly the way I like it." I suddenly feel sick. So have I for 6 weeks. His eyes lifted to mine. The mask finally fell. I saw calculation, fear, and a child's desperate hope that his father would rescue him one more time. Pop, listen to me. I listened while you discussed my death. I listened while you priced my properties. I listened when you asked whether I would suffer. Vanessa whispered. He knows. Yes, I said. Every pill, every lie, and every toast has been recorded. Vanessa turned toward the kitchen, perhaps thinking of the bottle in Adrian's pocket. We need to leave. Sit down, I said. Neither moved. I lifted the safe cup and held it toward my son. You told Vanessa I would always do what you said. Now I am asking for one thing. Drink the tea you prepared for me. His lower lip trembled. I never wanted to hurt you. Then drink. Vance said it wouldn't be painful. The confession escaped before he could stop it. Vanessa closed her eyes. Adrian realized what he had said and began shaking. I mean, that's what he told Vanessa. This was her idea. And there it is, she snapped. The moment you get scared, I become the monster. You pushed me into this. You owed Meridian before I knew anything. Their alliance collapsed as they blamed each other. I let the cameras record every word. Finally, Adrian looked at me through tears. I'm your son. Please don't destroy my life. The instinct to protect him rose inside me and died. You measured my life in 3 drops, I said. Whatever happens next belongs to you. I took Margaret's silver spoon from beside the poisoned cup and laid it slowly across my plate. The signal was complete. Somewhere beyond the walls, engines started. Adrian heard them first. His head turned toward the dark windows as blue light began to move across the curtains. The front door opened with one controlled strike. Detective Brooks entered first, followed by 4 officers in dark jackets marked State Police. Hands where we can see them, Vanessa screamed and reached for her phone. An officer stopped her before she touched it. Adrian remained beside the table, staring at the blue light moving across the walls, as if his mind could not connect it to the spoon on my plate. Brooks approached the poisoned cup without touching it. A forensic technician photographed the table, the chipped handle, the honey jar, and the brown bottle visible inside Adrian's pocket. Adrian Hale, Brooks said, step away from the evidence and place your hands behind your back. Evidence? He looked at me. Dad, tell them this is a family misunderstanding. A misunderstanding does not need 3 drops. His face collapsed. You set me up. I gave you a choice. You prepared the tea. The bottle and tea tested positive for digoxin. Vanessa blamed Adrian and Vance. Adrian blamed her deadline and French broker. Brooks separated them and read their rights, while the cameras recorded every accusation. When handcuffed, Adrian begged, I made a mistake. I'm your only son. And I was your only father, I said. Adrian lowered his head. Brooks showed him the warrant for attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, forgery, and financial exploitation. He looked toward the smoke detector and USB charger, realizing the house he had turned into my prison had become a witness against him. Vanessa was escorted outside, shouting that I would die alone. Alone is safer than loved by you, I answered. As Adrian passed Margaret's photograph in the hallway, he stopped. What would Mom say? He whispered. She would ask why the son she raised used her honey to kill her husband. He began to cry. I did not. The door closed behind him, and the house became quiet for the first time in months. Investigators searched Adrian's office and the guest bedroom. They found digoxin inside the honey, forged property guarantees, Meridian messages, and the draft invoice promising Vance $700,000. The physical evidence matched the recordings line by line. That night, Ryukti received a call from the second team stationed outside Vance's clinic. The doctor had arrived carrying cash, a passport, and a hard drive after Vanessa attempted to warn him. Officers intercepted him beside the rear exit. The drive contained the original medical scan he had altered, draft death certificates, and messages advising Adrian how to prevent an autopsy. Vance demanded an attorney and claimed he had been conducting a private medical study. Brooks placed the call on speaker long enough for me to hear another investigator answer. Studies require living participants to consent. A technician sealed the poisoned cup. 6 weeks of hidden pills, false weakness, and secret recordings had finally turned survival into proof. Arthur confirmed that the amended trust had been filed, and Adrian could no longer touch the estate. Through the front window, I watched police vehicles carry my son and daughter-in-law into the darkness. I felt no victory. Victory belonged to games in which something could be won. I had saved my life and Margaret's legacy, but I had lost the child whose hand I once held while crossing busy streets. Brooke stood beside me. "You did what you had to do." "I know," I said. "That is what makes it hurt." Then the ambulance doors opened, and I left the poisoned house alive. The trial began 7 months later, in a courtroom too small for everyone who wanted to witness it. Adrian sat beside his attorney without looking at me. Vanessa sat at another table, separated from the husband she had blamed during her first interrogation. Marcus Vance wore a plain gray suit instead of a white coat. Without that coat, he looked less like a respected physician and more like what he had become, a frightened man waiting for strangers to measure the value of his choices. The prosecution played the recordings in order: crushed pills, the deadline, Vance's false certificate, 3 drops, and Adrian's refusal to drink. Digoxin in my blood, hair, honey, bottle, and tea matched the footage. Financial records connected Meridian's debt to forged guarantees and Vance's payment. Vance accepted a plea and testified that Adrian had first asked him how to make a cardiac death look natural. Vanessa claimed she had acted from fear of Adrian's creditors. Adrian said grief and financial pressure had impaired his judgment. On the witness stand, I was asked whether my son had ever shown remorse before his arrest. I answered, "He showed fear when the cup was placed in front of him. Fear is not remorse." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Adrian was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, forgery, and financial exploitation. He received 24 years in state prison. Vanessa received 16. Vance received 11 years, lost his medical license permanently, and was ordered to compensate patients whose records he had falsified. I did not smile at the sentences. Adrian begged me not to disappear. "What happens next depends on who you become when no inheritance is waiting," I said. I promised neither visits nor forgiveness. The trust survived every challenge. The properties remained intact, and their income created the Hale Foundation for Elder Safety, funding housing, independent medical reviews, and legal aid for seniors controlled by relatives. The first senior we helped had been dismissed as confused until an independent blood test proved a relative was sedating her. I understood that Margaret's legacy had become larger than our grief. I sold the house, but kept the blue cup and silver spoon. They sit at the foundation above a plaque. Love, without accountability, can become a weapon. On the first anniversary of the arrest, I visited Margaret's grave. I told her the properties were safe, the foundation was growing, and our son was alive. I could not tell her our family had healed, because justice and healing are not the same thing. Justice closes a case. Healing teaches you how to wake the next morning without letting betrayal become your entire identity. Adrian tried to take my life because he believed my age made me weak, my grief made me confused, and my love made me controllable. He was wrong about all 3. The greatest inheritance we leave our children is not money. It is the example of what we refuse to become. And sometimes the final act of love is not rescuing someone from the consequences of their cruelty. It is protecting every future victim they might have created if we had remained silent.